Mm.
Neither of them. I just think Andrew was here.
Oh, he said he was here.
Oh, did he? Okay.
I thought he said he was.
Okay.
But
Right. Well, we're just wondering whether the next speaker's here.
one of our speakers isn't here yet. So I think what we'll do is flip the programme.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
So Andrew,
I'll just go and
I don't think Andrew Coward's here yet. And so I think what we'll have to do is skip and then come back to it later. So we're going to see if we can get Ashley Murtagh to come forward. Oh, here he is. Now, I'd like to welcome... Oh, is he here? Hi, Andrew. Would you like to come now? Okay, please. Okay, thank you, Ashley. Can I invite Andrew Coward to come forward? And as you can see, he's the chair of the NHS Birmingham South, CCG. Welcome. And,
Is there a roving mic?
No, I don't believe... Hold on, let's see if it's working.
Testing.
I'll get it sorted.
Yeah.
This one's working. The orange, the red light flashes, then it should go green, but it says red.
Testing.
Testing. That's better. Okay, we're on. Sorry, I can't stand still at a podium. Whoops.
If you move away from that one.
Yeah, is that a bit better? Well, good morning, everyone.
You keep going, Andrew, and I'll try and sort it out. Okay, try that.
Could you hear me at the back? Fine. That's a lot better for me. So my name's Andrew Coward. I'm the clinical chair of Birmingham South Central CCG. We cover a population of about 300,000 citizens in Birmingham. If you know Birmingham, we start at the southern end around Longbridge, King's Norton. We move through kind of Selly, Northfield, and then we move east through Sparkhill, Sparkbrook up to Stratford Road, essentially. So we cover I suppose, the more deprived outer rim of Birmingham and the more deprived inner part of Birmingham. In fact, out of interest, of the 211 CCGs in the country, we represent the 12th most deprived CCG. So that's a little bit about our CCG. I've been very proud to be the kind of co-chair of the Healthy Villages project for the last couple of years with Councillor Ian Ward, and I think we've made some significant progress. I suppose I'd like to start my comments by asking ourselves the question, what is the context of where we're at? Because you always have to kind of springboard off that, don't you? And the context of where we're at is very well known. And I don't think I'm going to say anything original, but the NHS, I suppose, it's a little bit of a kind of mixed blessing at the moment, isn't it? Right across the whole of the NHS, there is unprecedented demand. Now, for instance, from my general practice perspective, I know that because I still work as a GP, and I cannot, I think, exaggerate how my working life has changed just within a very short period of time. The surgery opens at 7 o'clock every morning. I'm often there at 6:30, and you're working. It's not. We often work 12-hour days, don't we? But it's just the relentless pace. It's difficult to find time, to do anything other than see patients. It's just dum. The public appear to have an insatiable appetite for GP appointments. It is remarkable, isn't it, that there are 350 million GP consultations in England alone in any one given year. 350 million, and the figure is going up all the time. We often hear about the crisis in A&E, and that's absolutely right. In comparison, there are 21 million A&E attendances every year in England. So you can see the vast majority of the workload is still very much in the community. So demand is going up, and you'll read in the press that that is unsustainable. I think that is true. But I suppose we also have to add in, and I would quote the Commonwealth Fund at this point. It might seem a little bit nostalgic to do it, even though the report was published in July 2014, where it very, I think, accurately described that the NHS is the best healthcare system in the world. It looked at all our comparator countries, Australia, Germany, Scandinavia. I mean, countries that normally beat us, whether it's at cricket or in a better kind of social service environment or in football. But in health, we absolutely knocked spots off all our comparator countries. I think in the 12 areas that we were judged, we came top in 10. The one that we particularly struggled in was with regard to unhealthy lifestyles, and there's no surprise there. I suppose there was a report published, I think, last week, saying that the UK might be the 5th richest economy in the world, and ranked 27th when it came to healthy lifestyles. So I suppose it's a bit of a mixed blessing, that's what I'm saying, isn't it? That the NHS is judged as the best healthcare system in the world by external auditors of its performance. And the other thing to throw into the mix was that of the 12 economies that the Commonwealth Fund looked at, we also spent the least amount of money. That's not entirely true. New Zealand spent just a little bit less than us, but I think they came 7th or 8th in this international comparison. So we see this kind of increasing demand right across health and social care. We see the historical context of the NHS being absolutely outstanding and belonging to the people, of course, as the first line of the NHS Constitution says. But we all know that we face a very challenging future, the challenge in the context of austerity. And despite what any of the political parties say, of course, the 5-year forward view made very clear that the recurrent challenge to the NHS by 2020 is £30 billion a year. So that magic figure that Simon Stevens came up with of an extra £8 billion for the NHS, which you might have seen some of the political parties talking about last week, is predicated on a £22 billion saving, and that's recurrent. Now, of course, that need for extra saving over the next few years comes into the context of about 800 or 900 million pounds alone being taken out of London local authority. Some of you will know that, and many years of a quick agenda affecting all major NHS providers. So again, that is another context in which we've got to find this extra money. So the point is this: how are we going to do it? I think appropriately there is silence in the truth, because the truth is no one knows. If someone says they have the answer, you know, like Donkey and Shrek, then I think they're sadly mistaken. No one does know the answer. The government and lots of kind of very clever people, cleverer than me, are saying, well, the answer is integration. Integration of statutory services people are normally talking about. Well, again, if you look at most of the surveys, the studies, it shows that integration improves the patient experience. I think it improves the provider's experience of care. But I'm afraid there is no evidence, no tangible evidence that I've seen that it saves money. So we face a real challenge, don't we? And I think part of being a member of a kind of statutory service, we tend to think along those lines. We tend to think about structures, and we tend to think about integration, and of course that can be about structures as well. And I think this is where the kind of genius of Healthy Villages comes along. I'm going to finish with a couple of patient stories, because certainly it's our governing body. We have been quite consumed with a couple of quality issues, and they're both broken. So if you look at the burden of increasing admissions in acute hospitals, one of the main sources of that has been increased admissions in COPD, smoking-related lung disease. And certainly in our quality work, we've been concerned about the level of pressure ulcers that our patients have been experiencing. So along comes Healthy Villages with its more, socialised preventative approach, and I think this is where we get to closer to where we need to be, I think, in terms of the kind of conundrums that we face. So Mrs. Smith, and she's a real patient, let's just call her that name, lives on her own and is subject to repeated COPD admissions. And you might know, or not, that the average non-elective admission costs £2,000. That's a lot of money by any judgment. So what do the doctors do? The doctors do what the doctors do. They increase her inhalers, they change the tablets, GP is scratching his or her head. No one can understand why this is happening. That's a district nurse, Heather, from BCHC with kind of extra navigator training, goes in and spends a little bit more time with Mrs. Smith, sits down with a cup of tea. Maybe that's kind of some of the space that we need to have this kind of conversation, and finds out the truth. And a lot of this is, what's really going on. And of course, what's really going on is that she's got a neighbour who lives across the main road, and the neighbour, for complex reasons, is getting into kind of crisis. She's calling up a friend. The friend's rushing across the road to sort her out, and then by the time she gets back, she's calling 999 because she's so short of breath. So Heather, sorry, she's in the room, goes across, knocks on the door, and I might be building a little bit here, forgive me if I don't sheer experience the story, knocks on the door and discovers a 97-year-old that her hearing aid batteries had run out, and I think she'd lost her glasses or trodden on them or something. So you had a 97-year-old vulnerable lady living on her own who could neither see nor hear. Not surprisingly, she was getting into trouble, falling over, whatever, and a friend would come and sort her out. So Heather went the second mile, rather than saying, that's not my problem, no one's referred her to me, and sorted out the hearing and visual problems, and the crises stopped happening. And funnily enough, Mrs. Smith's hospital admissions pulled up a bit. They just stopped happening. It's a very different way of approaching this kind of A&E attendance situation that we've got. There was a couple, similarly, it was a very tragic situation. The husband had had a stroke. I think it was 18 months into his kind of care package, I think maximum care package, 4 visits a day. And again, sorry Heather, it was you, wasn't it? And I think Heather went round one day and the wife just burst into tears and said that she didn't want to live anymore. It's understandable that the partner had had a stroke, her quality of life had just disappeared completely. And again, with this kind of extra training Heather had, she sat down, and one of the questions is, what would, when you're happiest, what would you like to do? Just trying to focus on life. Now, bearing in mind she was like 75, 76, 77 and racked full of arthritis. The reply was, again, it starts to show, I think, how ageist we can be. We see an older person in front of us, not a human being, because this older person said, I want to join a gym. I think it was not Heather with a feather at this point. anyway, it's a long story. I think that there was a local company that had special equipment that older people produce. So I think it took a lot of effort in terms of transport and maybe getting out of maybe a loss of confidence she'd suffered as a result of these experiences, but she got better to live. She had a lovely time. I hope I'm exercising when I'm 75. She met people. She socialised. People befriended her. They eventually persuaded her to come round to her home, and they started playing cards with her husband. He was the local prize gardener. He was very distressed that his garden was a mess, although he didn't seem a mess to anyone else. And they assisted, I think, in helping with the garden as well. I think that had a very positive impact on Precious Soul, and certainly had a very positive impact on their experience of health and well-being. So I think as we approach this kind of conundrum that I've described, and I'm not saying that I've got the answers, I just think that historically I and others have been guilty of a kind of one-dimensional view of the world. And that can be particularly true, I think, if you like, when you put doctors in charge of the health service, because obviously doctors do think very medically, do think in a very disease-orientated fashion. Of course, the majority of people don't have diseases. They might have symptoms, they certainly have a life or the context of their life. And I think only until we get into that agenda, as I think these two stories have demonstrated, will we really be able to grasp what is really going on in people's lives, not how we can help them, but how we can empower them to get to a better point than they're at the moment. There's many, many more things I could say, but I'm needed upstairs. But I hope you have a very good day. I hope that some of these opening remarks will maybe help you, maybe help me. You know, let's not think one-dimensionally. We need to, to get into Einstein, we need to think a little bit more four-dimensionally and get into that space-time conundrum, because it's only when we do that, I think, that we'll be able to come up with these genius ideas that we need. And again, we do need a genius, and I don't think that's me, I don't think it's David Cameron, and I don't think it's Simon Stevens. I think it's much more likely to be you. But to be fair to Simon Stevens, I think he has given us a little bit of space in which we could maybe throw some ideas together. So think the unthinkable, do some blue sky thinking. That's very much at the heart of what Religious, and I hope in that spirit we can achieve something much better than historically the tradition has done.
Thank you very much, Dr. Coward, and we thank you for taking the time to come down and speak with